So welcome. I'm Deborah Gallant. You are at a deep dive. Entrepreneurs Forever runs programs once a month called deep dives, and also once a month we run a program called Forever Forward. And each of them are meant to give you that extra level of information and education on something that we think you likely need to know more about. And I'm so pleased that I have a presenter today who we are actually initiating into the Entrepreneurs Forever family, Doogie Levine. Say hi, Doogie. Doogie is one of our brand new facilitators. And when I started noodling around for what's the subject going to be, and I said, who do I know who knows about organization and operations? Well, Doogie was my guy. He's going to give you his full bio in a minute, but he is a fractional COO, which means for other companies, he comes in and he helps figure out how to run their operations. So he seemed like the right guy to present this. So let me start sharing screen. We'll get going. And just so you all know, we do always keep half an hour at the end for your questions and answers from your expert. So let's view slideshow.
I'm also an interactive guy, so I may be calling on people to speak up at times. Warning you now.
And we love having your cameras on and contributing. So if you have very specific questions, please do hold them for the end. We don't record the end, so you can ask your questions and get Doogie and my wisdom. But if they're general questions or you have ideas, there's in fact parts of this presentation that literally say, give us some examples, and we'll be looking for your contributions then. So officially, you are at a deep dive presented by Entrepreneurs Forever. This one is called Organizing for Success, and Doogie wrote the subheadline, or Stop Playing Darts Blindfolded. We're going to do some introductions, who we are, who Entrepreneurs Forever is. I have started telling you about upcoming programs before we go into the presentation. Otherwise, I never get to it. And then, of course, we will be doing Q&A, and everything's recorded except the Q&A. So Entrepreneurs Forever's mission is to equalize opportunity by connecting often overlooked small business owners with the peers and support that they need to succeed. Today's topic, organizing for success. And what's so interesting is how people hear that, and some people think org charts, and some people think operations, and some people think key performance indicators. Yes, it's all of those things, and you'll hear more about it. I'm Deborah Gallant. I'm the Senior Program Manager at Entrepreneurs Forever. Doogie, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background so that they know who's our expert today.
Sure. I am Doogie Levine. I'm the founder of IAS Business Coaching Consulting. And we specialize in coming into small, medium-sized businesses and helping them to design their operational processes. We answer the how questions for business. How do you get things done? How do you solve this problem? And we make it so that businesses can repeat their actions over and over again. A little bit about my background is, so I actually come from a non-traditional business background. I don't have an MBA. I don't even have a business degree. My first business was I launched a summer camp from scratch. And I learned to combine my behavioral health background and the ability to read books about business, and I've combined them into my current business. So I like to approach problems from a non-traditional way and see if I can come up with unique and interesting answers. So that's a little bit about me.
And tell us what a fractional COO is.
Yeah, so a fractional COO is a part-time chief operations officer. So a lot of businesses at some point will have somebody in charge of operations. And operations is a catch-all term for a lot of things in a business, but an operations person's chief job is to organize the function, how a business runs and works. So what myself and my team members do is we actually come into businesses and we spend a certain amount of time per week on the ground actually helping businesses do this kind of work. So it's everything from running custom management trainings that fit that business for middle managers to writing SOPs, like standard checklists of how we do what we do, to creating sales process maps or designing ideal client avatars, whatever it is, we help with those things on a very generalist level. And then we connect them to experts, either by helping them hire or getting them outside resources.
Great. I've really enjoyed getting ready for this presentation with Doogie, and I think that you guys will find that he is a very creative problem solver. So if you have interesting questions, I think he'll have some fun helping you solve them. As I mentioned, I'd like to always tell you about our next set of presentations. Otherwise, I never get to them because we get carried away at the end. Our Forever Forward program about your personal credit and the impact it has on your business credit is on Friday, September 8th. We have a members panel about e-commerce. We have 4 different members who have been successful selling online, and they will be joining us for an In Good Company program on Wednesday, September 13th from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30. So it's over lunchtime. And the next deep dive is about valuing your business. And that's what's going to be presented by our CEO, AJ Drexler. So hope you can join us for any or all of these. That's the events page that you can scan and register for anything. And I also just want to mention, if some of you are unfamiliar with our organization, Entrepreneurs Forever, sometimes people just hear about the subject and sign up. We are now running weekly information sessions. So you can just drop in for about 45 minutes and learn more about it. Those of you who are members already, obviously, you know what you're doing. That's the URL. And Patrick, hopefully you're in a place where you can type that into the chat so everyone has it. I'm happy to join, see you there. I'll be running some of them, others running a few others. So, big disclaimer, this presentation does not take the place of professional advice from your own paid advisors. Now, Doogie, you found this slide. I hope you have the rights to it. I love it. Tell me what it means and why you stuck this right up at the front.
So actually, I'm gonna have people unmute for a second. What do you see? Chris Schroeder, you unmuted first on my screen. So what do you see?
A dude blindfolded, and he's about to maybe or maybe not hit the target.
Great. Cool. Anybody else? What do you see?
Is that Mike Tyson?
That is Mike Tyson. That is Mike Tyson.
Well, it's a photoshopped image because he's not actually aiming at the dartboard.
That's correct. How does it make you feel when you look at it?
I don't want to be in the room.
How does it make you feel? Anyone?
Unsure.
Unsure? Okay, cool. What else?
Yeah.
Risky.
Feel a little anxious.
Anxious. All right. What else?
Risky.
Risky. Great. What else? One more. Let's get one more.
I think it's very Mr. Miyagi.
Okay. A little feng shui, a little wax on, wax off. Okay. How is this like running a business?
Very much like running a business.
How many of you feel like this? Like you've been playing darts blindfolded?
It reminds me of the saying, ready, shoot, aim.
Okay. How many of you felt like you've been playing, like running your business sometimes where it's like, I'm chucking things up there, hoping they'll stick, but I've been wearing blindfolds and I can't see where I'm going? Like show of hands, shake your head. Like, like that's an experience you've had.
Throwing spaghetti against the wall. I've heard that one too.
Right? A lot of people. So for most entrepreneurs, and actually the vast majority of businesses, this is what it's like to run a business. You're working really hard to try to hit the bullseye. You're trying really hard, and sometimes you do it, but you don't necessarily know why or how, or you can't repeat the action. Only if you could see exactly where you're going. When we talk about operations in our businesses, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about removing the blindfold and being able to play darts perfectly. So I have some more questions. Deborah, if we can go to the next slide.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. How many of you experienced any of these kind of statements? Another, shake your head. Why does this thing keep happening? Why can't I take a break and go on vacation for once? Why do they always need me? Anybody else have any statements that they have? Things that they've been saying a lot?
The market keeps changing.
things outside? Why do these things outside of my control keep happening? It's a great one, James. Anybody else? So we all have these pain points. We all have these statements. How do we start solving them? Next. Yeah, we go. So we solve them because when we create organizational process and we create systems within our business, it allows us to do a lot of things. When you have operations, it allows you to have something that is testable. This is one of the most important things. Right now, what we do is probably not written down on paper. How many have exactly how they serve their client written down on a piece of paper? I see one hand. Okay, two, a kinda. Okay, so that's great. What this does is it allows you to actually have something that's testable. You can mark off, did I achieve each step along the journey? That's fantastic. The next thing operations will allow us to do is integrate people back into our business, right? So if we need to add another employee, for instance, or we need to add an outside vendor, having your processes documented in something that's actually something you can hand off and train allows us to do that. It allows you to change more effectively, right? So to James's point of like, well, the market keeps changing. If you have a plan and we have a structure, we can now change and react a little easier. And the last thing is it allows you, when you're 10 years into your business, to go back and say, why did I do what I did in the first place? Why is this policy the way that it's always been? So that's like a problem that happens to older businesses. They get into this rut where they have these people that are like, well, this is how we've always done it, right? This is how you avoid it. By actually documenting your purpose behind your decision, we can avoid these problems down the road. Any questions up till now? Feeling confident? How we doing? Shake your head, feeling good. This all makes sense so far?
This reminds me of a funny story. A friend of mine told me once. He was a consultant and he was at a client and they were in a finance environment and they would get down to the bottom of a column of numbers and they would multiply it by 1. And he pointed out to them that when you multiply anything by 1, it's the same number. And so he said to the group of people, why is this part of your process? And they said, because we've always done it this way. And not one person went and said, this doesn't really need to happen because it was unexamined.
Yeah. And no one knew why that rule was put in place in the first place.
That's right.
So by doing this, and we'll talk about how to document and all of those things a little bit later so that you can have this written down. And we've also provided some resources as examples. The next, we're going to switch to our worksheets real quick. Deborah, are you pulling it up?
Yeah, I'm opening the chat. This is just going to take me a minute to get this and attach it to, let's see.
So let's take a second. Does anybody have any questions while we wait for this to come up?
And of course, it's not working the way it should. So wait just a minute. I'll find it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we gonna get granular on the process, like about being organized for our business, or are we just gonna figure it out on our own, like what our process is?
So when you mean granular, do you mean like specifically down to like, so Tanya, what do you do?
It's gonna organize me. I mean, that's kind of.
Hold on, question. What do you do?
I do a lot of things.
So what's your business?
I'm an event planner. I run a DJ company, and I also have event rentals.
Okay, so you're the piece that you do for the most part is put on experiences for people.
Yes.
Cool. So the processes that you would go along with that would be everything from onboarding, like client identification, all the way through, say, designing their experience, making sure the materials are there. So we're going to get to your specifics in a second. Will we get down to actually writing each of those SOPs today? No. So that will be something you'll do offline because that can take quite a bit of time. But we're going to give you about, let's call it the 5,000-foot view of that experience today.
Okay.
And there's a whole half hour of Q&A at the end. And so we can get as granular as your
and that one I can break some stuff down for
viewers
somebody. I can use somebody as an
get.
example.
Well, I guess I'm asking more like, will we get a process that's like, oh, if you do these steps 1 through 5, it's good for any business. It's good for the DJ business, good for anybody.
So in that regard of like a checklist to follow on how to write your SOPs,
Yes.
in the resources, we provided an example of a hiring and onboarding checklist
Okay.
that you can then apply that same format to any process that you have.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right, so you all should have that worksheet now, and all we would need you to do on section 1, whether you want to do it digitally because it's a PDF that's fillable, or if you're old-fashioned like I am and you have a printer, you could print it out, is just write down the things you do daily or on most days. Do you want to give them any more direction than that, Doogie?
No, so like the thing is to think about your tasks. What are you doing every single day? Just fill them in, write them down. This is the first step to getting organized. So just put them down. And we're going to keep coming back to this throughout the workshop. So if you have a pencil or you can change, that's the best.
Hey, I got a question, Doogie.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be better to do it yourself or have someone else kind of follow you around and do it for you, kind of as a objective individual that can ask questions and stuff like that?
So I'm a biased party on that one as somebody who does it for a living. I will say doing it with you, which is what my service does, is actually the best thing. So we work directly with usually owners and management teams. And we teach the first thing we do is we actually teach the process of creating process. And then we work with companies to do it. So I personally, I'm biased. I believe that's the best way to do it.
It's a good question, James. James is a bookkeeper, so if you asked him the question about bookkeeping, he'd tell you that you should hire him too.
I mean, I would add, when you add multiple brains to a problem, you're going to get more solutions than if you just go with one. And also because you're so familiar with it, you just may overlook things, and especially creating a training package for someone else that you take for granted that someone from the outside wouldn't. So I always recommend adding another brain or two, some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. All right. So show of hands, we feel like we have a good list.
If you guys started to fill some things in, you can keep adding as you go along, but it's a starting point. So the
I'm just trying to
reason
keep
we have you do this is because Doogie's going to now tell you what those buckets on the right are on your sheet, so you can write a label on them, and then we're going to go back and connect your tasks to their labels. So there you go.
So first things first is most businesses are divided up into these 6 operational areas. And one of them is called operations. I personally don't use it, but a lot of people do. They call the term operations. I call it fulfillment. So that's why you see it next to it, fulfillment. But we're going to go into these in details. There's 6 main operational buckets. So Tanya, to answer your question, this is the first step in getting organized, is to look at it from this high level perspective of these 6 functional areas. Because one day, in your ideal organization that you're building, someone should be responsible for each of these areas, these 6 areas. So right now, let's say we just came down from 30,000 feet. We're now at 20. All right. So the first one is operations / fulfillment. Simply put, this is how you fulfill your promise. This is how I look at it. When I make a promise to a client, these are all the processes that allow me to fulfill that promise to somebody. So on your sheet, you can put in one of the buckets, fulfillment, and write your definition. So for me, it's how I do what I do. How do I deliver to my community, my clients, my team? How do I do what I do?
So help me get clear. So if I'm a consultant or a coach, my operations and fulfillment is
so what does your actual coaching program look like? So once they've signed on with you, they sign the dotted line and they're working with you, what is it? So for me, they're custom. Each one receives a custom roadmap. I'll show you when I show my sales process map, because that's one of the examples of a tool that I'm going to show today. But for me, we create custom roadmaps, and then we follow the steps of that roadmap. So it will say in the roadmap that we're going to evaluate XYZ process, right? It may be inventory management, for instance. That's a recent project I just finished for a company. So looking at their inventory management and their 2,000 unique items. And we went through redesigning everything from the intake of that inventory, how it actually gets logged electronically within their company, how each person interacts with each item, and then how eventually it gets put into their sales channels.
I wonder if there are other people on this who are thinking, how do I define operations and fulfillment. Can we help you out here? Anybody want to?
Yeah, I would love to hear what people, when you hear the words operations fulfillment, what do you hear?
What are you putting in that bucket for yourself?
Yep.
One of the things I also have to put in is legal and compliance issues. if they're
James,
out-
tell us your business.
We recruit and deliver technical talent. So when you have employees in multiple states, there's usually different laws and regulations which you need to adhere to.
So compliance could be one, or governance. Yep.
So for
What do
Tanya
those look
and
like
her,
for you? What do
and
those
her
actually
wedding
look like for your
planning
business,
business
James? Hold
would
on.
be the DJs, the deploying the client, the staff to work on it, to delivering the rentals. This is where I'm trying to get it.
So I can use either one as an example. Let me use the DJ business. So for the DJ business, for instance, the operations would be, so they've signed the dotted line. They're ready to start planning their experience. Let's call it a wedding. So you might have an intake sheet that they follow, right? That gets you your questions that are answered. How long's the event? What's the number of interactions, number of guests, song genres, types, blah, 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 theme, right? You're capturing all that information. Then you might have the next process, which would be booking the correct DJ if you outsource your DJs and they're not on your team, right? So you're then going to go through your contact list and connect with the right one. Then you're booking them. You're registering. Then you have X number of communications with the client. What happens during each of those communications, right? Are this a static email that's built, or is it something custom that needs to be written each time, etc.? Then we have load in for the event. So pre-load in, you might have an equipment checklist. What equipment are we taking? Then you have your load in, right? That's another checklist to say, did everything get set up correctly? Then you have the event. You have breakdown. Those would all be in fulfillment for a DJ business. Is that helpful for people when you think
Anybody
about your
else have
own
any
business
questions?
and all the small steps that are in it?
Any questions about what fulfillment is for your business?
So you used two words, you used operations and fulfillment. Are those two separate things, or are you using those synonymously?
I'm using them honestly. So for me, I use the word fulfillment. Most people use the term operations.
Gotcha.
Because I believe it's fulfilling on our promise of how we do what we do. Right. So that's just the language I use. It's the language I use with my clients as well. But the corporate world and like business world and books and everything, they call it operations.
So if you're producing a product, it's the creating the product here.
Yeah. So for instance, I have a client that makes candles, right? That's everything from how they go about procuring their ingredients to getting it into a sales channel. And then it goes into a different process and a different operational bucket from there.
So it's interesting, even though we're talking about operations overall, operations is actually a subset of a bigger set of business activities.
Yep. That's where I think it gets confusing for a lot of businesses, because operations is everything in a business. That's why I call it fulfillment.
Okay, let's go to the next bucket.
So the next one's marketing. Most people have heard of this bucket. Some people, this is their business. Marketing, simply for me, is really getting people to raise their hands. These are your systems and experiences you create to get someone to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm interested. Right? That's all marketing is. When you think about your marketing processes, that's all you're doing. Is getting someone to raise their hand and say, pick me. I want to talk to you. I want to try that. Get me in there.
I hear this is a huge pain point for a lot of businesses because they can't figure out what's going to actually get those people to say yes.
Yeah. So does anybody think about some, does anybody have any process in their marketing right now?
Well, we just started our process. We rebuilt our website, and we're working on right now setting up a PDF, a lead generating PDF, and then sticking it in the email automation, of course. So we have basically a checklist of this is what we're doing first, second, third, how to get to that end point to get the word out to the customer.
So the major tool, Tabitha, that's all great. Those are some great examples of functions within a customer's journey. The major tool is called a journey map. So when we do high level process mapping for marketing, and even all the way through their whole experience, I really encourage people to create a journey map. All right. And this is everything from identifying someone out there somewhere in the ether of the world who fits the profile of my ideal client, through all the way them becoming the biggest champion of my company, raising their hands, going, yes, I want to do that. Please pick me. You should do this too. Right? What it then allows you to do is to take the things like you're talking about, Tabitha, your email campaign, your educational PDF, and mapping them along that journey to show you visually where that person's progressing, where that lead, that prospect is actually progressing. And it also can tell you, you can start estimating time that way, right? So if they come from one sequence to enter another one, so say for instance, the PDF leads to the email campaign, you can see how long it takes from them to go from download of the PDF to engaging with the email campaign. We have that kind of data capabilities in today's world, that we can start measuring those progressions. And then you can do the same thing from email campaign to calling you or clicking on your website, whatever the next set of actions might be. But
So it's just
the major tool in this is called creating a journey map.
So that journey map is basically giving you those analytics that you need to get you from one point to the other and showing how it's working.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
So a very high level marketing company will put in those analytics into your journey mapping. But for you, it's just the major steps. For most smaller businesses, it's just the major steps and knowing what comes next for the person. Does that make sense? It's just knowing that, like, all right, from the PDF, I expect them to engage with my 30% of people to engage with my email campaign.
And then
And
if they don't, you have to figure out what went wrong. Like, do they not like filling out PDFs? Was this not a reasonable journey? But I think Doogie's point is everything's measurable now, or so many things are, that you'd be silly not to go back and go, is this working and actually accomplishing the goals that I set out?
Because what a lot of people do, and I know Chris is a marketer, he can probably speak to people that have engaged in marketing campaigns that are like, it didn't work. But they can never answer why. And part of it is because they didn't actually know what was supposed to be next, or they were just expecting immediate conversion to sale, which might have not been the right assumption. So we had some wrong hypothesis when we went about designing our systems. So
I put a customer journey map in the chat if anyone wants to see it.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks,
Thank
Devin.
you. Yeah, so that's a good one.
I see that a lot with entrepreneurs is it's called bright, shiny object syndrome, which is it's really easy to go, oh, here's a new thing. I'm going to TikTok, without ever then going, are my ideal clients making purchase decisions based on a relationship that they're established with me from TikTok? And if they're corporate people, I don't know, technical recruiters, doesn't seem to me like that's probably relevant. You can get very carried away, and especially in overwhelm, if the social media monopolizes your time, but it's not actually leading to clients. So don't let marketing do that to you.
Awesome. Let's move forward. All right. So the next one, depending on if you're a for-profit business or a nonprofit, the next set of processes or operational areas of your business is fundraising or sales. Right? So great. You've gotten them to raise their hand. They've engaged with your PDF, and now you got them on the phone with you. How many steps are in that process? What's occurring during that process? Who is responsible for engaging them? That's all going to be your fundraising and sales. It's how do you get them to go from, I love what you're saying, to let me give you a few dollars and cents. Right? That all makes sense? That one's probably the one that people are most familiar with, but actually have the least systems around.
And also are reluctant to ask for the order, which if you don't close the order, it doesn't count.
Yeah, I mean, those personal behaviors, you can also put them in there. Like, how do I get myself focused for a sales call? Like, do you have that written down? Like, what gets you excited so you walk in there feeling positive, even if you've had a really bad day, you stepped in a puddle, your dog peed on the floor, whatever, like you're having a really crappy day, but you have that sales call coming at, do you feel great? Do you have something that actually gets you to do that? You can create process around these things and then train your people to have similar stuff. The next one is human resources, HR, right? This is how do you serve your people? This is your internal client, right? Who is the internal client? Those are your employees. Those are your vendors, 1099 contractors. These are all those kind of systems around there. So that's everything from like a 401k to management training, to our policies around behavior. What is and is not acceptable in our company. So even if you're a one-person solopreneur, you should be working on developing your future employee handbook as you go. Right now, HR is the culture. It's the institutionalized culture of your business. So writing out some of these policies of what it means to be a part of my DJ company, what does it mean to be that person, is extremely important. Because when you go to start saying, shit, I need to hire because I have this workflow, you've at least identified the type of person you want. And we're going to get into a tool to actually help you progress to that a little later. The next is finance. This is how do we manage our money? Money in, money out, money staying still. What's happening with all your money? What's my relationship to my accountants, my bookkeeper? Is it internal, external, etc.? These are all your systems around money that goes into the bucket of finance. And the last one is retention. And the reason I separate it out as its own bucket, its own team in the future, is that the relationship after the initial sale and the timeline for the next sale is very different, and it requires a certain type of steward to build those relationships. So that's the main reason I do it. And it's how do you keep your customers engaged with you? So if you sell a product, you might have a high transaction time, right? You might expect that you're going to do 10 or 11 transactions with a customer. But in the example of the DJ company, you might do one every 7 years. Or if there's a real estate person, that's actually the average. Person buys a home every 7.5 years. So your relationship with that client, if you want to actually keep them as a long-term client, is now a 7-year process. And that's the way we have to think about designing it.
That's why you get a Christmas card from your realtor every year.
Right. And you probably aren't going to go back to them anyways, because they poorly informed you, but that's a whole different story. Sorry, that was some personal experience. I'm sorry. I'm just feeling it. That's just me. Little tension. Thank you all for being here in my therapy session. All right. So now that we have these definitions, these buckets, I want you to go back through your task list and put which operational bucket each of your tasks go with. So if you have, anybody have an example of a task? Chris?
Communication, like with the customer.
So customer communication, do you mean that like as answering emails or?
Yeah, email, phone, Zoom.
Okay. So I would divide each of those up into subcategories, and then that's just for me. But then, so what bucket would that be in for you?
I was thinking customer retention.
So put it in there. It could be both. It could be marketing. If they're new, if they're prospects, it's probably marketing. If they're current clients and you haven't finished the project,
fulfillment, right?
It's fulfillment.
Actually, yeah.
Communication usually goes into a lot of buckets, and it's different in each one. This is why we get real specific, and it's a great example because you're putting all your catch-all into it. But in reality, when you go and approach the different stages, like you're going to approach your prospect conversations different than you're going to approach your current clients that you're working with versus the clients you finished a project with. Each one of them gets a different set of conversations. And we'll have a different set of tools in the future to have those relationships. So, you want to get specific and be like, it's prospect communication via email. And I do that. I do 4 of those a day, right? Like get specific. If you haven't gone to that level of specific with your task, I challenge you to go back and put numbers to it. Like I make 5 phone calls. Like for me, I contact 3 leads each day. That's in my my marketing category.
That's impressive.
Right? I reach out to 3 leads a day, and that's via email or phone or video, some combination of the 3. Let's Deborah, let's stay on that for a minute. Yeah.
I have a question. So I guide Latinas to speak English with confidence so they can share their talent to the world. And I offer coaching programs. So in one of my tasks, the time that I'm spending delivering the program, like I have tasks that they have to do weekly, or I have live sessions. All this is part of the operation.
Yeah, so that'd be under like operations fulfillment,
And
right?
what
So
about,
there, yeah, go ahead.
and what about if I already have a program for recurring customers? Is that retention, or this is operation?
So that's a unique question for your specific business to how you want to think about that.
Okay.
It depends on like when it comes to coaching or ongoing services, right? It's a little different than say somebody who is selling a singular experience or a singular item, or one service and has 10 other services that they're selling, right? Like if you were to sell a one-off language course that was like an online thing, they might then go to cut retention or even back into sales potentially. So it's for your business, it becomes unique where you decide to label them. And to be honest, it doesn't actually matter what bucket you choose to put it in long term. It's just making the choice to say it lives here, and these people in the future are going to be responsible for it.
Okay, perfect. Great.
That's the most important, aspects of this.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great example. Devin?
Yeah, I don't know if it's my mistake, but I went going through that. I had fulfillment, marketing, sales, HR. I'm still missing 2 buckets.
Finance.
So yeah, finance and customer retention, I think, are the 2 you're missing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Chris?
So if one of my tasks is like working on the business, like creating SOPs and business training, etc., being on the Zoom call with you guys, like how would that be categorized?
Wow, it's a good one.
Interesting. It's a good one. So writing the SOPs, for instance, that can like literally, usually that lives in operations, writing your business SOPs. The use of your personal time, I don't know if it will ever be like an SOP in reality, right? That's like more like, hey, a policy, or this is just our calendar, right? Like your SOP around this might be, how do we mark it on a calendar that you're doing this personal development? Or if down the line, Chris, if you're saying personal development is a policy of our organization and it's like a cornerstone of what it means to work for me, then that can go into policies, which then goes into the handbook, which lives under HR.
I think that's a professional
sense?
development. That might be where I'd put it.
Right. So, but like it's
Also
all
guarantee-
about how you look down the line. If you're saying like, yeah, professional development is a huge portion of our business. We fund it, we believe in it, etc. This is where that goes. And it's part of our HR team. My HR person in the future is going to be responsible for this. This hypothetical HR person is going to be in charge of it. Great question. Made me think. Any other questions? All right. Now we're going to have you reflect a little bit on your tasks. In the middle 2 columns, there's one on the left and one on the right. You're going to put either an L or an A. If you like this task, like I like doing it every single day, you'll put an L. If it's A, I want to get rid of this or I avoid it with all, like it's the plague, you'll put an A next to that task. Any questions on that?
So you're putting an L here and an A here. And then for these tasks, you're trying to determine, do I like them or do I not like them?
So do I like them or do I avoid them? And it will all make sense when we come back to it towards the end.
And this is like what we're doing currently, not like I'd like to avoid that in the future and just hand it off.
Well, if you know you're avoiding it now because you don't like it, boy, there's an indicator.
Okay,
right? Like you want to avoid it now. You might have to do it right now. What I'm saying is, right, you want to get rid of it.
Right.
Doogie and I had a really fun conversation planning this presentation about, should you keep doing the things you love or should you keep doing the things you avoid? And which ones do you outsource first?
And a lot of this is also making, like, we're working down. So we're at about 10,000 feet right now, looking at your tasks, because now we're starting to make choices of where we want to go in terms of the direction of your business, right? It starts to tell you what positions you actually need to fill first, what tasks you want to offload, what tasks you need to automate. So before we start getting into tools, you have to make these kind of high level decisions of what's actually important to you to actually move your business forward, or where do you want to stay? So, and I kind of gave a little bit away there. That's my bad. All right. So what are some common themes that you see in your tasks, your hassles? What do you see?
Anyone want to share?
Okay, I'll share.
Love it, Tanya. Thank you for taking
No
a
problem.
risk.
I'm sorry, I was eating dinner. One of my biggest hassles is I hate writing quotes, because like I talk to the client on the phone and they're super excited, and then they get the quote and they're like, either like, oh my God. I mean, even though we talked about the money aspect and I asked for the sale and they said yes, when they get the quote, I think there's sometimes sticker shock of like what I'm designing, or because we do custom build outs, custom props, and things like that. So I think there's like a disconnect, and it makes me just like hate doing them, because I feel like they take an hour of time for one. So we're always like internally talking about how can we make this process easier for me, because I hate them. And then two, it's like, well, are they gonna be like, I just had a girl just text me now and say, I want to nix everything. I'm not going to do the draping now for my daughter's wedding. Even though we talked about it, we went over it. She was okay with the price. Like, I don't know what happened. And I'm like, can you tell me what the disconnect was so that I can do better for my next client, or maybe so I can still help you? And no response. So that makes me like disgusted with the fact that I wasted all that time making.
Your example has two problems there. One is something that happened after you engaged with the client, right? They changed their mind about something.
Right.
The other one is this fear that they have as soon as they see the contract.
Yes.
So there are two different problems that you actually have to separate.
Okay.
And to say, how can I reduce the fear of my prospect? Right? Like identifying the question that you need to ask and solving and creating a process is more important than just trying to then the solution. Identifying the right conversation and to look at it from a behavior standpoint, right?
Okay.
This is fear, right? The example that you're giving that the person is having is fear. So how do we make, what's the opposite of fear?
Safety.
Safe, calm, right?
Yes.
So in our process there, our objectives, and we're going to get into this when we write, when I show you like the 5 steps of writing it, the objective is to have our clients feel safe.
But don't they feel safe when they're talking to me and I'm saying like, I need your budget, and they're saying, okay, here is my budget, or here's my range. Is that not making them feel safe enough?
That's the question to ask yourself as you're going through this. Are you making them feel safe enough? What are you doing to ensure that safety? Maybe it's the quote has to disappear and you take the payment right there. Right? Like, because they're at their safest point, they haven't thought about it. You do the ask, you don't even write a quote. Like, there are so many solutions potentially to your problem.
Okay, let's do that. No quotes. Give me your card.
There are so many solutions to your problem, but identifying what the person needs is the first step. And then you can be like, would just being like, all right, cool, let's sign the dotted line right now. I have a contract. Let's put this in there. I'll get you all the details after you sign the contract. You know, like your quote actually, your quote, your roadmap for their experience actually comes after.
Okay.
You know?
Because I also have a website where they can just throw stuff in their cart, and I have people that do that all the time without asking me questions, don't know the sizes of things, don't know how many they need of stuff. And they call me after, and I'm like, so how do I get more decision makers like that can commit to like, yes, I want balloons for my corporate event. Yes, I want silverware, whatever. I mean, how can I go about getting that? Or is that back to marketing?
Yeah, it's back to marketing. It's back to client identification, like who that ideal client is, what makes them unique, how do they do what they do, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But it's still identifying like behaviors and feelings that you want to have that person happen, right? If you want all your clients to just click the button and say yes, cool. How are you attracting those clients? That becomes the question. Then the quote issue isn't even an issue anymore.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like you don't care about the quote clients anymore. You're moving on from them and going to attract an entirely different type of client.
One that's ready.
In that situation.
Okay.
But these are like high level choices that you would make. And I'm not telling you to make any of them right now. I just want to be very clear.
Right.
All right. Anybody else? What are some common threads you see about the buckets, about your tasks? Yeah, go ahead, Devin.
I think that I know this has been a problem, and this just shows it even more, that working in the business instead of on the business, most of these, my daily tasks are like related to work product, so like deliverables and stuff. So where that's to a point where that's prioritized over planning. So yeah, that's a major theme of my list here.
It's a very common theme for, are you a solopreneur or single operator right now? Or have a small team, maybe 1099 contractors?
Yeah, I have a few contractors. But yeah, mostly I'm
yeah, so that it's a very common theme. What are our solutions to that theme?
Well, it's doing this, building out standard operating procedures so that you can hand those things off.
Yeah, exactly. You have two options, right? You hire someone to do it, you hand it off. Well, really three. Like you hand it off either to an employee or an external service that can provide that, or you find ways to create automations. Right? Those are your options. And that means buying software usually, or something along those lines, or building software or something like that.
And
Right.
Devin, actually, an Entrepreneurs Forever group is that 2 hours of permission you give yourself every month to work on your business, which is, pat yourself on the head. It's like, that's a beautiful thing, because a lot of entrepreneurs don't even take that time. So it's all good.
Setting aside time for planning every week. Like if you don't have a business plan, it's the most important SOP you're going to write for your business. Hands down, the most important SOP is going to be your business plan, because it actually has everything else that every tool should find its way in here eventually. And part of your planning should just being able to review that.
Right,
And what I suggest for a lot of small businesses is just to go on a personal retreat, write your business plan, give yourself 2 days and write your business plan. But all right, so let's move forward. All right, so now we're going to peek under the blindfold. We're going to show you a couple core SOPs, processes in your business. So one that businesses really forget about is their mission statement. I think it's one of actually the most important ones. It's second to a business plan. It usually goes in a business plan. Your mission, it tells the world in every action that you're doing why you're doing what you're doing. So we provided you a resource to Simon Sinek, who I think is one of the best at writing mission/vision statements. But the cores of this is, when you write a good mission statement, it makes all of your decision making easier. When you're having tough decisions on like, should I invest in this? Should I hire this person? Should I take this risk? The question is, does it advance your mission? Whatever that is. Does it advance why you're doing what you're doing? Does it get you to the place you want to go? If the answer is yes, it makes that investment a hell of a lot easier to make. Like I really work with people that have driven missions. If you're just trying to get rich, growing a business is really hard to do. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's really hard to do. The other things are, it allows you to attract customers and employees. So like when we go back and we start talking about identifying who's an ideal employee, well, this is a tool to help you tell you what that cultural fit needs to be. And the other thing is, it keeps you focused. I keep my personal mission statement and my business mission statement on my wall next to me, so I can look at it every single day, right? Just because I need to see it. So that's one tool. Simon Sinek will teach you how to write them really well. I'm not the best mission statement writer, I'll be honest. All right, so this is the simple 5 steps to creating any SOP. And then the resource we provided you in the resource section is a documentation of how to document a standard checklist SOP. So checklist SOPs are like the most common one we think of. It's do this, do this, do this, do this, check them off, right? All right, so the first thing is to create a list of processes. So what you do is you take a bucket, right? So you take a marketing, for instance, and you're going to put all of your processes that are in there. So for instance, email campaign might be in there. Customer journey map might be in there. Websites in there, etc. Right? And each one of those. So that's the first thing you're doing is you're just creating a list of all the processes that fit underneath that bucket. So we now have these large buckets. And for you, it's as simple as taking some of your tasks, writing them out underneath the bucket header. And now you started to do this, right? All right, the next thing is to identify the audience of your SOP. Who is it for? Right? Who are you creating the SOP for? Anybody have an example or can think of that answer?
A VA.
A VA, right? So that's a perfect internal client, right? Our virtual assistant might be the person we're designing it for. An employee might be the person we're designing it for. An outside service might be the person we're designing it for. So just having this in mind when we go about designing it. The next thing is we define the objectives. So those can be both tactical, like converting 100 sales. That's a tactical objective, but it can also be an objective, just like making someone feel a certain way. So I want my employees to feel like this when they're doing this process. I want them to feel like they're in love with the customer experience, for instance, or I want them to feel like they're making a difference in our customer's experience. All right. Then we choose the format. So that could be a checklist. That could be a policy, right? These are forms of it. It could be a video. You choose whatever format is appropriate for your business. And then last thing is just create it. Just write it, whatever it is, film it. If it's a video, if it's a policy, write the policy.
I'll just point out that we did a deep dive with an organizer, professional organizer, who ran a whole deep dive on creating SOPs, and she offered some handouts as well. And I will, when I recap this and send you the recording and the handouts, I will include those SOP ones as well, because I think they're really relevant here.
So to answer your question, here's the 5-step process for creating any SOP. And then the other SOP video will give you the details. Yes, Elena.
Is there a question?
Yeah, I see a
No,
hand.
I was just applauding her saying she's going to send those resources.
No problem.
Oh, okay. Yes, so there are resources available too. All right, so the next one, this is called a sales process map. This is actually mine. So I spoke about this earlier. This is the sales experience that I want my clients to go through. So step 1 is defining the problem. This is both for the audience for this. This is both internal and external. So it'd be internal for a future salesperson, and it's external because it's client facing on my website. So it outlines our process. I usually have 2 90-minute conversations with my clients before I convert them into, they start entering like the conversion piece. And that's where I start asking for money, right? I'm identifying it. The next thing we're doing is prescribing the solutions. Then after we prescribe the solutions and they sign on and say, yeah, you're the guy to help me solve, to be my doctor, we then go and create them a custom roadmap, their custom experience of how we're going to go about solving it. And in my business, that can take anywhere between 3 months to some clients I've now been working with for 3 years, depending on the size and scale of the business and the fact that we're switching from process to process to process. I want to be very clear. Process work takes time, right? And the bigger your business, the longer it's going to take to actually create them. The more people that are involved, the longer it takes to create them. But if you've created them already, it's easier to integrate people and grow. So just know it does take a long time, because it takes, even if it takes you a month to say, write it, you now have to test it over the course of the next 3 months, 6 months, a year, depending on what it is in frequency. So just know this is a journey. All right. The next one for a lot of people that are in early stages is to design your ideal org chart. So if we're going to take our buckets to the next level, you're going to design the positions that go to each of these buckets. So this is actually an example of the company that I want to build. This is my ideal org chart. I removed a few of the details and there's no links in it to the job descriptions, but I've given everybody a title, I've given everybody a salary, and I've written a job description for everything in the top category up so far. And the reason for this is it tells me where I'm aiming. What am I trying to build? It tells me why am I trying to build it. So going back to my mission, this is the organization that I think will help me do this. This also lives in my business plan.
Now, Doogie, not every business that is part of our community wants to get bigger. Some of them, you know, are pretty happy as small businesses. So is this relevant for them?
Potentially, right? Because here's the thing is it still shows you all the hats that you're currently wearing. So for instance, my name is on every single one of these positions and my business still runs. My goal is just to remove myself from everything and be an owner and have somebody in all of these wearing all these hats. So I don't have to wear them. It depends on what your goals are. If you have the goal and you want to wear, say, the DJ hat, but you don't want to do the rest of it, all right, that's one hat that you want to wear long-term, build the business so that everybody else, whatever you need to do that. It aligns with your goals. It's creating your ideal org chart. The next is write your job descriptions that goes along with this. I strongly suggest that you write job descriptions, and it's a type of SOP for any position you currently have. And once you've made your ideal org chart for the ones you want to get rid of. This way, whenever you're ready to hire, you have a place to start, you have something to go with, you have access to what you desired when you set out to make this business. Deborah, correct me if I'm wrong, we've given them a link to job description. I think we've given them an example. Yeah, so in the resources section, you'll also have access to example job descriptions. And the SOP that I provided as a template is actually an SOP on how to hire and onboard a new employee. So that's usually a struggle for people, like how do we do it? So there you go. We're providing that for you. All right. So now the big question is, how do you get rid of operations first? Do you do the things that you do best and get rid of those other pieces, people, services? Or do you get rid of the things you avoid? Now, Deborah and I are in two different houses on this one. I personally believe you should offload them, the things that you do best, because that's the thing you're best able to train somebody on.
And
Deborah,
I
your
say
thoughts?
that pile of stuff that you're never going to do, that's what you hire somebody to do. Or you at least find a 1099 kind of person who can do it for you, because it's obviously not getting done well in your business.
So this is the debate that usually keeps most businesses from ever moving on from, cool, I've gotten a little organized. Well, what do I do? This is the debate that starts to hold them up. Should I get rid of the things that I hate or get rid of the things that I love? It doesn't matter. Just get past this. That's all I'm going to tell you. When you hit this issue, just get past it. So I think we're at time in terms of.
Yeah, I just want to wind us up and then we'll go to Q&A.
Yeah, so thank you all. Hopefully you've gotten something out of it. Can anybody share like a takeaway, something that they've enjoyed? Is this helpful? Where are they at? Just trying to get a barometer. Where are we at?
We're going to give you time for your questions in a minute.
We're going to get into detailed questions after, but where are you at? Feeling good?
I like the techniques and principle. To me, it's easier said than done. There's always never one silver bullet. So when I create these standing operating procedures, it's got to be, well, if this, then it can lead to other 3 operating procedures. So I can see this a mind mapping of standard operating procedures which is useful for CRM or training or anything else.
James, you're 100% right. There's no right or wrong way to go about it. It's just about doing. And also, they're never finished. I know I didn't mention that, but your processes are never done. Right? It's not a finite thing. I wrote them, they're done. That's not how this works. They're a living document, And you'll see on the SOP, it says, when was it revised last? And when is that, like, in some of my clients, I actually schedule revisions. Especially in the first few years of running it, we actually schedule when we're going to revise it. So even if nothing's happened, it hasn't broken, we schedule when we're going to take a look at it again.
What do you mean we're multiplying by 1 at the end?
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Anybody else?
I just want to point out that we have that time tracker there in your takeaway, which might help you if you were kind of stuck at the beginning at stage 1 of like, what do I spend time on? That's a great place to start. I'm actually gonna officially end so we can go to an open discussion and Q&A. So hold on one sec. Let me just stop recording.